everyone. Today we are here with Will from Howls, and we're going to talk about telling a story for your business and how do you relate that with the customers. First of all, Will, why don't you tell us what Howls is all about?
Okay, Three Howls, the name Three Howls comes from the three howls of a Scottish hound that howls three times before it takes to the underworld. I'm a big Scotch fan and I wanted to have my little ode to Scotland in the name of the distillery. You know, I think Scotland is a great, has a lot of roots in the liquor industry, and I think it's important to connect to those roots in a way that people can understand.
Okay, cool. So how long has this been open, like Three Howls? When did you first start this place?
So about a year and a half ago I got laid off, and I have a 2-year 50-mile non-compete, and I've never not worked in my life, and I've never been laid off or I've never been fired, so I didn't know what to do. And so after about a week of trying to figure out which direction I wanted to go, I wrote a business plan and went out and got a bank to give me a loan and found the distillery space that we're currently in to lease. And it was a long process because I had to do all the paperwork myself because I'm not independently wealthy. So, you know, it's a lot less expensive for me to do it than to hire a lawyer to do all the legal paperwork. We opened up last June with our blended bourbon and with our rum, and out of a weird twist of fate, we ended up being the first rum distillery in Washington State, which was interesting.
Oh, for real? Wow.
Yeah, because everyone else got a different license, and I didn't like that particular license, so I went with a more expensive license, but it allows me to manufacture whatever I want. You know, from my point of view, I love the idea of supporting local farmers, but the amount of grains that local distilleries purchase are so small that farmers are used to dealing with 30 to 40,000 tons at a time, and we would be ordering 2,000 or 3,000 pounds at a time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I wanted to be able to create the best quality products at the best price point I can, and so I chose to go the route that I currently am in terms of my liquor licensing.
Okay, cool. Let me just jump into the topic we want to discuss today. Why do you think the startups need to tell a story?
I think the startups need to tell a story primarily because nobody knows about them, and it's easy in your head to think that everybody knows about you and knows about your products because you know about you and you know about your products and all your friends know about you, but outside of you and your friends, the world has no clue that you exist. And I think it's very important for startups because it is a way for people to go out and take their enthusiasm and their knowledge on the subject and really try to create a customer base who's at least partially as excited as you are about your new business. The other reason it's important for a startup is that if it's a well-established business, the customer base, I think, doesn't get quite as excited about the experience, but being a startup, people get really excited about the idea that you're starting something new, and I think a lot of people like to be a part of that new and fresh business that's just starting out.
Right. Okay, so like it's if you have a story, it's easier for the customers to relate to what your startup is, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's important for me to tell a storyline with Three Howls because with the liquor industry, it's a very competitive industry. When you go to the bar, there's a huge wall of various products that various companies sell, and a lot of those companies have much larger marketing dollars than I have for their products. So for me, the best and least expensive way for me to generate interest for my products is to tell the storyline behind Three Howls and how I started the distillery and why it was started and what I'm trying to do that's uniquely independent from some of the big distilleries. You know, marketing is vitally important and it can be horribly expensive. So anything you can do to generate buzz and generate interest for your business is always something that you should go for.
Nice. Okay, so then storytelling is important because it's easy for users or customers to relate with your product, and also a way to stand apart from like a very competing competitors.
That is correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier, your brand image has a lot to do with your storyline, and if there's a disconnect between what your brand image is and the storyline you're telling customers, it may lead to some consumer confusion of your brand.
Okay, I can understand you really have a good storytelling for your business, like even starting from your brand name, like Three Howls, Scotch, and like rum and Scotch. So, what would be your tips or best practices for good storytelling?
My tips, first off, don't be afraid to show your enthusiasm in terms of your new startup.
Okay.
Anyone who's starting a startup is going to experience great highs and like pretty bad lows at times, but the entire process is a very exciting process. And if you tell it in a way that doesn't show your enthusiasm, it's hard for other people to get quite as excited about your idea as you are. The other thing that I think is important with telling that storyline is relating the brand image into your story. If your brand image is one thing and your storyline has nothing to do with where your brand image is, then you've got a disconnect that I think is hard for people to relate to. So something else to remember is to make sure that your brand image is a part of that story that you're telling people.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And on the other side, what are the mistakes you should avoid when you're telling a story or when you're trying to market your startup?
So some of the mistakes that I found have been when you get too techie about your startup ideas. I tend to be a bit of a geek, and so I tend to go into the details of the distilling, and sometimes I'll watch people's eyes glaze over as they start losing interest because I'm talking more about how you actually make distillate instead of the actual story behind the business. People love stories, and people love to feel like they're part of the story, and telling them exactly how you created calcium bicarbonate doesn't exactly get people to generate interest for you.
And relate with your startup. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Will from Three Howls. And thanks, Will, for sharing your perspective on telling a story for your business, and thanks for having me over here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I love talking, and I hope that at least a little bit of what I said is something that you can use.